Welcome back to Learning Improvement at UNC Chapel Hill. In Episode 2, we saw why claims break down when the finding, response, and follow-up do not connect. This episode turns that critique into a design process. A targeted effort requires 3 decisions. Are we improving the assessment process or changing students' learning conditions? What bounded change could address the learning problem? And what follow-up will inform the next decision? Assessment process improvements change how evidence is obtained or interpreted. For example, by aligning a rubric, training raters, improving sampling, or replacing a weak measure. They can make evidence more trustworthy, but they do not by themselves change what students experience. A student-facing effort changes the conditions under which learning occurs by revising practice, feedback, pedagogy, assignments, advising, or support. A rubric can do both. Used only for more consistent scoring, it is an assessment change. Used by students to analyze examples, guide practice, or interpret feedback, it becomes student-facing. The question is how the action is expected to affect learning. Faculty interpret the evidence and choose the response. Assessment coordinators sustain continuity by convening faculty, locating the finding, recording the action and owner, and carrying the decision forward. A coordinator should not invent a faculty interpretation merely to complete a report. Begin with the observed pattern, then state a working explanation. It is a hypothesis, not a discovered root cause. Ask what learning opportunity or curricular condition might plausibly contribute to the pattern. Then choose a bounded response. Bounded does not mean timid or trivial. It means narrow enough to implement and examine, but strong enough to address the hypothesized mechanism. Consider the illustrative case from Episode 2. Capstone work showed difficulty synthesizing sources into a sustained argument. One explanation is insufficient guided practice before the capstone. Training raters could improve the assessment. A student-facing response would add synthesis exercises, annotated examples, and criterion-based feedback earlier in the methods course. That proposal identifies the pattern, a working explanation, the curricular location, and an action within program control. It still needs an owner, timing, and support. Now apply the 4 questions on screen to one current finding. What pattern needs attention? Where can the program respond? What student-facing change is strong enough to address the working explanation? And who owns implementation? Pause the video here if you want time to work. Then resume when you are ready. Plan the follow-up before launching the change. First, what evidence will show whether the change was implemented as intended and reached the intended students? Second, what comparable evidence will indicate whether the targeted learning pattern changed? In the synthesis example, faculty might document whether the exercises occurred in the intended sections, and then examine the same synthesis dimension in comparable capstone work during the next cycle. Comparable does not mean automatically identical. Faculty should consider the assignment, cohort, timing, and scoring process when interpreting differences. Finally, specify the next decision. If implementation was adequate and the expected pattern appears, retain the change provisionally. If implementation was adequate but the pattern does not change, reconsider the explanation or refine or replace the response. If implementation was weak, the intervention remains inadequately tested. This is not experimental proof. Routine reassessment usually cannot isolate the intervention as the cause of later results. Its purpose is disciplined inquiry. Implement a defensible response, examine relevant evidence, and make the next decision explicitly. A targeted effort is fully designed only when its learning rationale, owner, implementation evidence, learning evidence, and next decision are visible. In Episode 4, we will turn that design into a clear improvement claim and show how annual reports can preserve one continuous decision trail. Sources and additional workshop resources appear on screen and in the video description. Thank you for watching.